1, 2, 3, cheese!
Lovely.
And after our paparazzi shoot, shall we
begin? Right, hello everyone!
And
Welcome back to episode 2
of the SketchPad Pod.
This is a podcast where we talk about art, creativity, pop culture, lots more, while doing art.
Oh, yeah, great. And if you are joining us, we are on season 2. So if you haven't watched season 1, I'm going to say it again. Go back, watch it, listen to it. It's a fun time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. We are sort of bulk filming today, so this is our second episode that we're doing today.
Feeling good.
And I'm feeling good. I think we're doing well on time as well, because actually I was meant to meet Honor at like 9:30 this morning, and I wake up at 10 and I'm like, oh no, I honestly felt awful.
Can I play the voice recording?
I sound really
You
tired?
sound really stressed, it's so bad.
Hold it to the mic.
Hey, Honor, I'm so sorry. I slept through my alarms. I will get over there as fast as possible.
Oh god.
I was literally in my kitchen, I was like, oh.
I felt
Bless,
so bad.
You sounded like so like tired and like disturbed and stressed. I was like, honestly, it's fine. Because the joke is, in the family, I'm like usually late. I'm quite free with timing, you know.
I'm normally on time.
Alicia's usually on time.
That did not happen today.
No, that did make you laugh, actually.
I mean, this is the second humiliating thing that happened to me this week. I also locked myself out of my car.
You did?
Yeah, that was stressful. I was at the garage and I drove up to the pump, and my driving instructor's there, and I'm like, oh, I should say hi. And so I'm in my head thinking about the next steps I have to do, that I just automatically lock my car from the inside.
Yeah, so easily done.
Yeah, and so then I'm like, he's like, oh, how are you? I'm like, not good, I've just locked myself out of my car. And he's like, oh no. At which point, he lets me borrow his phone, and I call
It's the same driving instructor that I have, so he and my brother had.
Yeah.
So he has the whole family's
lots of
number.
family's numbers, so I was calling literally everyone, and then Honor's brother Jordan picked up, and I was like, Jordan, I'm sent to the garage, I need help. And he's like, funnily enough, I'm just having ice cream in the garden with mum and dad, and one of us will be over shortly. I'm like, yeah, and then my aunt came to my rescue, at which point I then managed to use her phone to get in contact with my mum, and she brought out my spare key. But it was
not fun.
Humiliating.
I was out with a friend. I was around at a friend's house and got home and had all these calls from Leisha, and I also had some missed calls from my driving instructor. So I was like, oh nice. I assumed he was calling to schedule a lesson or something. And then I'd been told by Jordan, oh, Alicia's locked her keys in the car. And then I call my driving instructor back, and he's like, I've actually just seen Alicia, and told me the story. And I was like, that's not ideal. I'll just double check that someone's helped her out.
Yeah. But no, so that is just another classic Alicia moment. Should we explain what we're doing today?
Yeah, we probably should. So we're very excited. We've got a bit of a new series for season 2.
Yes.
Where we're going to look at different art movements. So today we're starting off with Fauvism.
Yes.
Do you want to give a little bit of a...
Yeah, so Fauvism is the first avant-garde movement that began in France, and it ranges from 1904 to 1910. So we're basically I'm going to talk about the sort of history, the inspiration behind Fauvism, how it got its name, some of the characteristics, that sort of thing. And Honor has got some artists that she's picked out to do a bit of research on. And we're also going to try and do paintings in the style.
So today, just as a precursor so you know what our paintings are, Fauvism uses quite bold brush strokes and like dabs of paint in very bold colours that don't look natural.
Yeah, non-naturalistic.
Non-naturalistic colours. So I'm doing it's like a beach view landscape thing. Actually, you will have seen a couple of months ago on our Instagram page, I did like a watercolour and pen drawing of a similar landscape. From
our little trip to Devon.
From our trip to Devon. So I'm doing the sand in like quite harsh, bold reds, yellows and oranges, and then it uses a lot of contrasting colours. Complementary colours.
And I am doing a painting of an image that I took while I was in Venice, and it's just like a boat coming up to a bridge, and you've got some like buildings around it. So it's actually quite a dark image, but I think I'll try and use maybe some blues, because one of the things that the Fauvists do is they substitute colour for light and dark. So
there you go.
I shall try that.
I'm gonna try and pretty much finish it during recording the pod, because I want to just do it straight away, and I don't want to be too like precious over it.
One of the things about Fauvism is that it was made to be quite a quick form of painting, because they didn't have much time to churn out the work, so they were trying to find a like more impactful way of painting. So hopefully we can actually get some way into our paintings in this episode.
Yeah. Okay, so do you want to give us the history
the rundown
of Fauvism?
So, let's start right at the end of the 19th century. So that was when art was dominated by Impressionism, which can be characterised by thin brush strokes, accurate depictions of light, often focusing on like ordinary subject matters and landscapes, nature, that sort of thing.
I assume this is pre-camera.
Yes.
So it's when primarily painting was to accurately depict life, wasn't it?
Yeah. They were starting to sort of branch out a bit more, but it is mainly based on like traditional uses of perspective and like painting techniques to focus on like light and stuff like that. So you might know then the post-impressionists such as Cézanne, Gauguin and Van Gogh. Obviously Van Gogh is huge now. Interestingly, Van Gogh had died in 1891, so right at the end of the 19th century, and his work was only starting to be discovered like after his death. But basically the post-impressionists came after the impressionists, hence post-impressionists, and they started to introduce a bolder colour palette which focused more on like form and the like structure of things slightly. And so, as I said, Cézanne, Gauguin, Van Gogh, big major artists in this area. And so in 1901 and 1905, Van Gogh's work was displayed in what's called a retrospective. So that's looking back at sort of the overarching career of an artist. So that normally happens like after their death, or after a significant amount of time within their career. Van Gogh had died, and then he had 2 retrospectives in France right at the beginning of the 20th century. Also, Gauguin had died in 1903, and he had a retrospective that autumn. And Cézanne died in 1904.
Cool, it wasn't doing too well for the art.
So basically, the post-impressionists sort of just died out. But this, paved the way for new artists, and it allowed these artists at the time to formally see the works of their like predecessors.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the word. For the first time in person. Gauguin had been working in Tahiti, and so he'd a lot of his Tahitian paintings were only being like brought back to France after his death, and displayed for the first time. And he'd used like lots of bold, warm colour palettes. And Cézanne was also known for painting in the south of France, so there was definitely an emphasis on like sun and warmth and like light reflection.
Cool.
So all of this was taken on board by these new artists who were like, this is interesting, but I think we can do better. I think we can take this up a notch. And so these included artists such as Matisse, André Derain and Vlaminck, and they were hugely impacted by these exhibitions and wanted to make work that was reactionary, bold, and most importantly quick to make, because if you think the last of these retrospectives was in 1905, they had their first exhibition in 1905, so there was a very quick turnaround. So a bunch of these artists went down to the south of France, and they painted during like the spring and summer, so that they could then show their work at the Salon d'Automne in Paris.
That's some lovely pronunciation.
Oh yeah, you know, my French pronunciation is just
top
notch. But yeah, so I don't know if you know Cézanne's work, but his was like lots of dashes.
Sure, yeah.
And I guess one of the things is that I remember learning about this in my history of art lesson is that I want to say it was Derain had gone. Oh no, it was Matisse. He'd gone painting with Cézanne before, and he was like, you know, this is good, but it's not quick enough. Like, I need something quicker. So that's how some of the like more pronounced dash marks of the Fauvist style came, because he started just doing, it's almost like pointillism or like staccato is what the Cézanne's work looked like, but this is much more like definite brush strokes that you can see, so it's just being a bit looser.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like,
you're going for it.
So for people who are listening, not watching, I've got dots of like yellows, reds, oranges for the sand, dashes just across, and then for the sea I'm doing similar but with blue. But I'm cracking on.
I am going slightly slower because obviously I'm talking.
You're talking,
at the same
yeah,
time.
exactly.
But in a minute I will hand over to Honor and then I will speed up. But what I was going to say is a bit about like their technique and what characteristics there are of the style. So as Honor was mentioning, they don't use very so it's non-naturalistic colour, and I was saying it's like they opted for larger brush strokes. Their colour often came straight from the tube, so
yeah, which
is surprising.
It's surprising. I was saying expensive.
Yes, I know.
I was like, blimey.
I sometimes go to a gallery and I see people with these like really thick oil paints,
I know.
and I'm like, yeah, I don't have the money for that.
I know.
So maybe
honestly.
not. But today I am trying it. I'm trying it for the fauves.
I'm
the babes.
I'm not going straight from the tube because that is very bold.
I'm trying to do straight from the tube. But my colours already seem to be getting a little muddy. I don't know. Is that me?
No, I know what you mean. Mine are like quite blurred, and I mean,
Yeah.
I guess that's the style.
So basically the colour was replacing light and shadow. So instead of say highlights, you might see yellow instead. Or shadows, you'd see blue. So I'm gonna add some yellow here where I would technically have sky, which would be the highlight.
Yeah. So
Picture.
later on, I have a couple of examples to show. But so I'm looking at painting ahead now just to sort of get an idea of the style, and the sky is like just red. So it is, instead of using the realistic natural tones, it's using colour to represent it.
Yes. And they also sort of rejected the traditional ideas of perspective and 3 dimensions, and they were focusing on planes of colour, so just one layer of colour on top of another, which I think you can see in Andre Duran's work, which I think Honor might be bringing up later.
Oh, I am.
Oh, exciting. And also, sometimes they used harsh outlines, which I believe came from Gauguin's paintings. He was inspired by woodcuts, and so he started using like thick outlines to his figures or forms. So that also came into Fauvism. They spent a summer painting in 1905, and then they exhibited in the autumn in Paris, and they actually exhibited these works alongside classical sculptures, which you can imagine is like quite a contrast. These like really bright, vibrant, crazy paintings next to these like classical, like posed, like soft, muted sculptures, and it created great controversy with one art critic, I'm gonna butcher this, Louis Vaucelles. Oh,
that was quite
right,
good
actually. I just had to like hype myself up for that. He was known to have called it Donatello among the wild beasts, and can you guess what wild beast translates to in French?
Oh, might it be fauve?
Yes, it is. It's les fauves. So, hence the namesake of the movement. They basically are just wild animals painting in such crazy, ridiculous ways.
They were like referred to as like wild beasts.
Yeah.
Which I think is really interesting.
It is.
Because I'd never really thought of why it would be Fauvism before.
Yeah.
But
You'll see this as a trend in other movements as well. Like art critics they'll like say something and then everyone latches onto it and they're like, yep, that's
the one.
That's the one. But so in 1906, other artists like George Braque and Raoul Duffy joined the group. But
join the squad.
The squad. They were having a party. But yeah, by 1908, the movement was slowing quite a bit, and there was an increasing interest in. Do we remember Cézanne from the Post-Impressionists? He was still influencing people, but there was an increasing interest in his order and structure of paintings. So that caused many artists to look towards Cubism, which is the next one.
Yeah.
So that sort of takes you on a full circle. It's quite a short movement, Fauvism, but it's like, it's got a bit of oomph, a bit of impact.
A bit of a pow.
Yes. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Do you want me to talk about?
Should we take
a break? That's a good idea.
Honor's gonna fill us in on the artistes.
Okay, we're back. And we're better than ever.
Better than ever, baby.
So what I'm finding really interesting is so far it's quite hard to explain. Imagine the sand is reds and yellow dashes, the sea is blue dashes, and I'm about to go into the sky, which is going to be blues and greens and yellows again. But it's fast. It's like fast to do. Okay. So I'm going to talk about Andre Duran a little bit more. I'm probably going to stop painting for a little bit because
That's okay. That gives me a chance to
catch up. I'm just trying to not get paint on my notebook. That'd be amazing. Okay, so Andre Duran is is it Henri Matisse or Henri Matisse?
I would say it is Henri.
Yeah. I think it is.
We're talking French here.
We're talking Francais. Right, so both of those guys were thought to be key influential people in the Fauvism movement. So André Durand was born just outside of Paris in 1880, and in 1898 he attended painting classes whilst training to be an engineer. So at these classes he met Henri Matisse, which I love. So I didn't really realise all the like really famous painters like
of the time.
Durand, Matisse, like I didn't realise they were all like best buds.
Yeah.
So it turns out they're all really good friends, and I kind of love that. So, he attended these painting classes and met Henri Matisse, but in 1900s he was drafted into military service for 4 years. But after military service, Matisse persuaded Durand's parents to let him abandon his engineering career and become a painter. So he attended the Académie Julienne.
Nicely done.
Lovely, thank you very much. And Matisse was about 10 years older. He was born in 1869. So Durand and Matisse worked together through the summer of 1905, like Leisha was mentioning, and they used vivid, unnatural colours. And actually in 1906, the art dealer Ambroise Vollard,
Ambrose Vollard.
That's the
right?
one. Lovely. Sent Durand to London to produce 30 paintings of London. And for those watching, this is one of Durand's most famous paintings. For those not watching, it's called Charing Cross Bridge, and you can just look it up. So that is the painting. You can see the really bold colours. It's essentially a very 2D abstract painting of London, using bold colours and brush strokes, and it looks quite unnatural, and it's basically like completely different to what the painting style was before he did that.
Because I think some Impressionist painters had done previous landscape paintings in London. And so Vollard sent Durand there to sort of do new paintings of London, to be like, see, these are the old ones, these are the new ones.
Which is look at us. So in 1907, Daniel Henry Kahnweiler bought Durand's entire studio, which obviously provided him financial stability and security. And then Durand moved to Montmartre, which I assume is in France, to be near his friend Pablo Picasso, which I also love, just best buds with Picasso. And actually that's when Durand's art style began to develop and change away from Fauvism, showing the influence of Cubism and Paul Cézanne, like you were saying. But some just extra little facts and things. So that is Picasso's most famous piece of art by Picasso. It's called Lady in a Hat, if you're not watching.
Yeah.
And I've actually got I've taken photos of descriptions that I found online, because we're not very good at giving visual descriptions. So the first one was... Okay, so this is about Durand's Charing Cross Bridge. So André Durand painted Charing Cross Bridge during his brief stay of 2 months in London during the winter of 1906. The painting depicts the scene from the south shores of the River Thames as the artist observed it while standing on a wharf near the Lions Brewery, which is the blue building on the far left. The rippling water effect was achieved by using short, choppy brush strokes. The distant buildings and the landscape were painted employing smooth, soft lines in order to create a contrast with the close, sharp contours in the foreground. The bridge shows the train driving through it, and it remains one of his most popular paintings to this day. And then Matisse, this is a bit of a description about Femme au Chapeau. or woman in a hat. Woman with a hat, sorry. So it marked a stylistic change from the regulated brushstrokes of Matisse's earlier work to a more expressive individual style, and his use of non-naturalistic colours and loose brushwork, which contributed to a sketchy or unfinished quality, seemed shocking to the viewers of that day.
Nice.
So the former Femme... Oh, my days, my French is going down the drain. Femme au chapeau was a painting of the artist's wife, Amélie, who posed for this half-length portrait. She's depicted in an elaborate outfit with classic French bourgeoisie attributes. So she's got a gloved arm holding a fan and an elaborate hat on her head. So her costume's vibrant hues are purely expressive. However, when asked about the hue of the dress, Matisse was like, black, of course.
Black, of course.
There you go. And just a little bonus fact. So a quote from André Duran. Painting is too beautiful to be reduced to images which may be compared with those of a dog or a horse. It is imperative that we escape the circle in which the realists have trapped us in. Which I thought was quite interesting. And final
There was
quote.
nothing realistic. Oh my gosh, you know what I've just realised I've been doing this whole time? Is I've been putting my paintbrush in my drinking water.
You're drinking water
Which
with
had
a single
lime in
slice
it.
of lime because we didn't have lemon.
Wow. I guess I won't be drinking that then. It's like dark. Oh no.
What's interesting is my paint water is still pretty much just uncoloured because I haven't really been washing my paintbrush. Okay, this is my last fact. Pablo Picasso, Fernanda Oliver, who was Pablo Picasso's mistress at the time, described Duran as slim, elegant, with a lively colour and enamelled black hair, with an English chic somewhat striking, fancy waistcoats, ties in crude colours, red and green, always a pipe in his mouth. Phlegmatic, mocking, cold, and arguer.
Almost sounds like a character, doesn't it?
Yeah,
rather than a
really
real person.
interesting. So there you go.
Wow.
What are your thoughts on Fauvism then?
I quite liked learning about Fauvism, and I sort of like how it just allowed artists to be a lot freer and have a bit of fun, you know. But also, it's when you try do it, if you can see my work, it's looking interesting. It's actually more difficult than you think because a lot of it is to do with the direction of this brush strokes, which parts you choose to put in, which parts you leave out. It's been a learning experience, you know.
It's definitely not as easy as it looks, because although it looks like it's just paint slapped on paper, you've got to decide what colours you're going to substitute. So it's a bit difficult knowing. So I've substituted the light blue wash of the sky to be yellow, because that shows light, obviously. But you're kind of like, oh, is this going to work? Like, how's this going to look?
Yeah, and sometimes the Fauves left like raw canvas visible.
Yeah, they did.
But then you have to decide like how much and where, and yeah, no, it is different to what I normally do. In some ways. I mean, I think the bold use of colour I really like, and I think it paved the way for a lot more variants of expressive painting. But interestingly, Cubism, which comes straight after it, is a lot more muted colours, so I guess they kind of got bored of...
There's kind of... art is always, it's said to be like reaction.
Yeah. You sort of have to have a reaction for or against the other movement that's come before it. So it's always...
There's a reason movements develop the way they do.
Yeah, exactly. But also I think sometimes it's about the time that something is painted, you know. This is a this is the beginning of the 20th century, so this is all about newness and new technology and like this hope for a big bright century. And so I think it's fitting that you've got like such bold colours coming in. Whereas, as we'll see later on, the war obviously affected artists in numerous ways, or the wars plural, should I say. But yeah, what do you think overall?
I think it's really interesting because I would never sit down. So if we think about the art that we've done over the past weeks, especially in season 1, we've done landscape paintings. I've done a lot of watercolour and pen, and the thing. So I think naturally, I think my favourite type of art to do is probably watercolour and pen. So although it's got almost a graphic kind of style to it, I still try to depict the scene as it is in a way.
Yeah.
Like I don't tend to stray too far from that. So I think it's really amazing that people create these art movements, and like the artists at the time did this because it's like a really interesting way of painting, and it's not exactly easy to just like think.
No,
oh, like
it's completely out of the norm.
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't. It's really interesting how art develops as a reaction to each other, in ways that you just can't expect.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time people can look at different like modernist or postmodernist styles and be like, oh, like it's like, why are they doing that? That takes no skill. But I think sometimes the skill is in the intellect and the battle that's going on between artists of how art should progress. But also, like I was saying, there is a lot more thought in it than you actually think. It's like it's having to have the control to let yourself be free with your colours and with your brush marks, but also to still create something that is good, visibly recognisable, and that the colours sort of either they clash or they complement each other for different purposes. Yeah. And that's why they also often looked at, urban scenes or, something that had that same like life and atmosphere and vibrancy to it, is because they really were trying to create some sort of reaction and emotion. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
I think this might be the quickest I've ever painted on this podcast.
I was about 10 minutes in, I was like, I've done half the painting, like how is this gonna work?
I would probably want to go back over this and like layer up, but
you've got a what's interesting as well, we've actually gone about it in very different styles.
Yeah, yours is very sort of like it's dash marks in one direction. Yeah. And it's very like close together. So you've got most of like your page filled, whereas I still have a lot of raw canvas left. Yeah. So I'm just trying to figure out how
are you gonna finish that one off?
How to finish it off.
Do we want to wrap up the pod there?
As always, our photos of our final pieces will be on Instagram at the SketchPad Pod, and we hope to.
We hope you've enjoyed this new sort of style of episode, and in a couple of weeks we're talking about Cubism. So tell us what you think about that. Yeah, and if you have any favourite Fauvism paintings, which quite frankly I'd be surprised if you do. Let us know. Comment your thoughts. Right. Have a good week. Bye-bye. Bye.